So we've got the stage set. We've got the Passover feast going on. We've got Jesus around this table with his disciples. And what does Jesus do? Jesus takes this basin of water. He removes his outer cloak. He wraps this towel around him. And he approaches his disciples. See what he does? He takes this basin and he goes to every single one of them. He goes to them. He puts this in front of them. And he gets down on his knees and he grabs their feet. He pulls them up and he sets them down in the water. And he washes the filth off of their feet. And when he's done, one by one, he'll take each foot out and he will dry that foot off so they can put it back in their sandal. And he will dry the other one off so they can put it back in their sandal. See, he went around the room one by one. He stood in front of them, kneeled down in front of every man. See, Jesus was showing something way more than humility here. Jesus was doing something far greater than washing the legs and the feet of some dirty men. But then, look what he does. Then, he steps in front of Judas. He pulls the basin in front of Judas. He gets on his knees in front of Judas. Picks up his feet, puts them in the water, washes them, and dries them. He knew what Judas was getting ready to do. He knew what Peter was going to do. He knew what Peter did. He knew what Judas did. He knew what Thomas was going to do and did. But he washed their feet anyway. See, it was way more than washing of feet in this story. But Judas, I mean, really, he was going to turn over Jesus for a couple of bucks. And Jesus knelt in front of that man who was going to turn him in to be killed and picked up his feet and washed them? Can you imagine what was going through the mind of Jesus at this time? Back to John. The evening meal was in progress. The devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer cloak, wrapped the towel around his waist, and then he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet. And then he came to Judas. Jesus knew that Judas was not clean, that Judas was full of pride. See, Judas represents every person that will do anything to make themselves happy and feel fulfilled for a moment. And the hour had come. And Jesus came in front of Judas. Jesus looked at the man who was going to do this terrible thing to him. Instead of everyone in the room knowing what Judas was doing, see, Jesus could have told them what Judas was going to do. And Judas would have never made it out of there alive. Instead of doing that, he'd pick that man's feet up and put it in the water and wash them. Because he is just the same as everybody else. All his faults, all his mess-ups. Sure, he's done good things too. And he washed his feet anyway. See, grace is for everyone. Forgiveness is for everyone. Everyone is unclean. The Word of God says in the book of Romans, no one is righteous. Back to John again. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you'll understand?" "No," said Peter. "You shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash your feet, you'll have no part of me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "don't just wash my feet, but my hands and my head as well." And Jesus answered, "Those who have a bath only need their feet washed, for their whole body is clean." Notice what Peter said to Jesus. "Absolutely not. You are not going to wash me. I'm going to wash you." Look at what Jesus says. "Unless you allow me to kneel down in front of you, pick up your feet, put them in the water, wash those feet off, you've got nothing to do with me." It is way more than Jesus washing feet. See, Jesus approaches you. He pulls the basin of water in front of you, knowing all of this stuff that you've done and are going to do. And he's on his knees, and he reaches down, and he pulls your feet up, and he puts your feet in the water. And he's not just washing your feet. Jesus says, "Unless you allow me to wash your feet," okay, "unless you allow me to forgive you, you have nothing to do with me. Unless you understand that I have the power to forgive everything, everything you've done, everything in your past, you can never get past that stuff. Until you allow me to forgive you, you've got nothing to do with me." And there's no way to effectively do my work in the future if you do not allow me to do this for you. Back to John again. When he finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet." Jesus knew what these men were going to do against him. Yet he still offers them grace. Notice what he did. It was more than an act of humility. It was more than cleaning a body. Jesus forgave them with this act. "Allow me to do this for you," is what he says. But how could he forgive them? I mean, look at the stuff that they did. Look at all the stuff that they said